Denny, what's your rating?
4.81. That is such bullshit because I tip like crazy. I don't know. I guess it's just rub everyone the wrong way.
The following is a production of Dirty Mo Media.
Hey guys, welcome to Actions Detrimental. I am Denny Hamlin, driver of the Mavis Toyota this past weekend in Pocono, and the birthday boy and my co-host
is Red Vest number 311, Jared Allen.
Happy birthday, Jared.
Thank you. Feels like it's been my birthday for 2 weeks now.
That's how people celebrate them now, evidently. We were going through this with this discussion over what do we do for Molly's birthday, and I said, can I vote nothing? And then I asked my mom, I said, hey mom, how many birthday parties did you throw me when I was growing up? She said, 0? I said, exactly. Why do we have to have a birthday party for every single year now? I don't get it. It seems like it needs to be.
How old is she turning?
7.
Okay, so not like that big of it's not a big number.
No, that's what I'm saying. Like, let's keep it to 10, 21. 10, 16, 21. And after that, she's going to be long gone and forget about that. So it don't matter.
If your birthday's in the winter, it's easy to like not have parties, especially if you're like in a cold state. But if it's a summertime here, you got to do something.
I mean, what happened to just buying a cake, blowing out the candles?
You mean let her have some friends over?
You know how frugal my mom was? She used to save the candles every year. Once I would blow them out,
really,
she'd pull them out, clean them up, and put them back in the drawer, and then use them the following year.
That seems weird. I mean, I've never.
No, we used the
put
same
candles in a cake
for
for somebody, but
for forever, really. Yeah. Anyhow, yeah. So you're 30 now, right?
I'm 30. Yeah, they say the best podcasting years are behind you now. peak at 30. You know.
Yeah. I don't know. I feel like when I was 35, like that was the age I would want to live in.
What were you doing at 30?
Winning a lot of races. 2010. I was doing the same thing I was doing today. I didn't own a race team. I didn't have a podcast. I did not have kids. Things were just a bit simpler. Let's just say that. So all I did was race. And that was it. So I tell you, so you're 30. That's a big monumental birthday. We had a going out, as we said last week. We had a little going out thing for you. Where were we the week before? Chicago. Yeah, we went out in Chicago. That was fun. Did you do anything this weekend for the actual birthday?
Yeah, as I told all my friends, I feel like it worked out perfectly because we were in Chicago, and Chicago's obviously a fun city. So my family on the road, we got to celebrate there. And then this weekend it worked out that Pocono is my home track. So it all worked out that obviously my birthday fell on that same weekend. So I was home and we had like a family get together Friday and Saturday night. So all my family got to celebrate with me, who I don't see all that often, maybe once or twice a year. They came to the race on Sunday, and it was nearly a perfect weekend.
Way to go, Denny.
Yeah.
Way to ruin the perfect weekend.
I've done worse. All right, so where do we want to head with this? You want to go off track, on track?
Let's start with the race. Let's start with Pocono and what could have been.
Let's see. What could have been? Yeah, I mean, it all comes down to, in the end, I believe that when the 12 short pitted the second stage there, we decided to stay out and win it. That was a key moment for sure. And we knew that, that was likely going to happen. If you stay out and you're going to go to try to win a stage, you likely will not be in the top 5 when you come to, kind of reset this thing. And I just felt like our car was strong, but that was the strategy that Chris wanted to deploy. One of them being is that, hey, you at least leave with something. You know you're going to leave with something. There's no guarantees that you're going to win the race. But, if you know you're going to win the stage, that is 1 playoff point. It is 10 regular season points. So I thought that, our goal being there was to try to stretch that lead as much as we could, and then force allow very few cars to then short pit that stage, which I think Blaney was one of the only ones, because he was the only one within 17 seconds of us when the checker finally fell. So yeah, I mean, it's one of those things that it can go either way, but we just felt like the best thing for us was to take the bird in hand and then see if we can't come back and win it, which we have in past years. We've done this before and been fast enough to then go back up and pass. But I just think that the field is likely just getting so close now in speed that it is going to be more and more difficult.
But we just saw at the end of stage one, you finished out stage one and then restarted back near the 20s. And we're pretty much the only car that could drive through the field.
Chase Elliott.
Truex made some moves too, but
yeah, Chase is in front of me. He actually was. I saw he got the good jump on the first lap. Like he gapped me by like 3 or 4 cars, and then we just kept marching through the field with a 3 or 4 car gap the rest of the way. But yeah, we restarted in the low 20s there. We drove up to the back end of the top 10, and then we had a good car that could pass. But the difference is that try to educate the folks here on listening, is that passing cars in traffic, when everyone is in traffic, is so much easier than passing a leader that is in no traffic. That leader has such a distinct advantage aerodynamically that it allows him to just really carry a ton of speed into the corner. He's got all the grip on his car because he's got all the air pushing down on his car, allowing it to have grip. But when you're in a pack and say you're in the 20s, you can make it up towards, you can make passes back there because the person in front of you is likely fighting dirty air as well, right? They're moving all around, trying to get out of the wake of the car in front of them. And then you typically can make a move to go the opposite of where they go. And then it allows you to at least get up beside them. So it's two different things. Passing in the pack is one thing. Passing for the lead at that track is really, really hard and difficult. So I just knew the whole time that it was 30, 40 to go. It's like, this is just going to be such a tall task to try to get around these guys. You're either going to have to do it on a restart or hope they make a mistake. At the end there, I was trying to be really patient with Bowman because I saw and I knew what was going to happen is if I just push to try to get around him and I don't, then I'm not going to be able to make a charge. And so I had to wait on the tires to slow down just a little bit, and then I was able to make a move on him.
How many more laps do you think you would have needed to get to Blaney's bumper?
I'm not really sure because I think that he was running his, when he was running his all out, I think we were kind of matching times at that point. So I think his car was pretty strong, and he was obviously in the top 5 for most of the day on speed. So I thought it was probably going to be difficult to get around him. He, of all the other cars that I chased, it seemed like I could stay close with everyone else. But, I mean, I never really ran behind Blaney throughout the day except for the very end, those last 7 laps. But it seemed like he had decent enough pace that he was going to be able to hold us off. You're going to have a 3/4 advantage speed-wise, and maybe that's not even enough at a track like Pocono to try to pass, simply because, like we talked about, this next-gen car needs lots of space. It needs wide corners where the cars are going way up high or way down low. You cannot run in the wake of these things because it just takes so much downforce away.
So you think this race, from your perspective, was lost when he short-pitted this stage, not necessarily all the cautions that took away your long run laps?
Yeah, I mean, certainly if the race goes into a super long run, I always like our chances in a really long run. But, because the reason I like that is that the tires fall off. They get hot. They start wearing out. And at that point, the leader, while he is still in clean air, he's fighting his car. And so there's more likely scenario of him missing his lines or his apexes when the tires are hotter. So he then backs up corners, and then next thing you know, as running second, you can get a big draft down the straightaway. let's just go the opposite direction to him in the corner, and let's see who has more grip. And so I just think that at that point, I needed the race to go full green, the 40 laps, or just needed things to work out on restarts, and neither one did.
Do you think the best car won the race yesterday?
I mean, that's so subjective. It'd be easy for me sitting in my seat to say, oh, we had the best car because we drove through the pack and we were able to do things that others didn't. But a deserving car, how about that? A deserving car won the race yesterday. And so, it wasn't a fluky deal by any means.
What do you think this means now for Ford? Because a few weeks ago, we didn't necessarily see Blaney in the picture. And now it seems like they're running their best races through the summer stretch.
Yeah, they're figuring things out, right? It seems like that you would argue, you got Iowa that he won. This is his second win, they said, in 5 weeks. So he's getting on a roll, certainly, kind of getting back to the form. The way he was at the end of the playoffs last year, that was exceptional for him. I mean, he was the fastest car all those short tracks by a decent chunk. But certainly putting himself back in the picture of being a contender on all racetracks like he was a few years ago.
How do you feel about your chances right now getting back? You've got a stretch that wasn't so great for you. You get back in the top 5 this weekend. Are you starting to get your momentum back?
Yeah, I mean, it's 1 week, but yes, I definitely feel like, nothing stupid or crazy happened yesterday that took us out. There was no bad restart that then led to another wreck. Like, it's just it was an uneventful race for the 11, and this is typically where we're going to finish, is in the top 5 when nothing crazy really kind of happens. And so as long as there's no novelties or anything like that, we always like our chances. No wet weather, and so yeah, I think this is what we're capable of week in, week out. But yeah, it was good to kind of get back on the horse.
Speaking of restarts, after the Kyle Busch wreck, you were starting second on the inside lane next to Blaney, Truex behind you, and on that restart, Truex pulls out. Do you think had he stayed in, you guys could have had a chance to maybe get up? You at least could have cleared Blaney?
That was a killer. I mean, it's very difficult and it takes a ton of discipline, but on the, when we take off at Pocono on restarts, drivers, you have to have the mentality that this is like a super speedway, and that if you pull out of line, you are going to kill any of the momentum that line had. And so what happens likely is that when you pull out of line, while you might gain in the short term, and that being you go down there and, all right, I passed the car that was right in front of me. Well, you've got a train of cars on the outside that is going to just freight train you down at the end of the straightaway for one, and then you get off of turn 2, the top line is still the place that you want to be. So it's a short-term gain, and I try to look to see, did Martin really gain anything by it? I don't think he did.
I think he went backwards.
Yeah, it was kind of a wash, but certainly you got to run and you want to take it. But what happens is it just really stalls the whole line out, and the whole line drags backwards. Even though still, I was able to charge into one enough to be beside Blaney right when that caution came out. And so I would have loved to seen us be able to race through one right there, side by side, and maybe I could side draft down the backstretch into 2 on them. But who knows? We'll never know.
When you have a teammate behind you, are you thinking, okay, I'm in a good spot here, I know they're going to push it? Were you expecting him to do something like that?
Well, I had Byron behind me, and then he put Byron 3 wide. So that was the key was. But I don't, when it comes to teammates, I don't really expect anything as far as that's concerned. I mean, I think if you communicate to each other that, hey, I'm going to push here, then yes, I do expect it. But
kind of like what you did at the beginning of the race with Truex.
Yeah, but I think that I don't expect that, because I expect us all to race each other. There's been many times I put my teammates 3 wides on restarts because that's the move I need to make in that given moment for myself. And I would expect the same from them, is that they'll make the moves what they deem best for them in that particular moment.
If it's not, if pulling out of the bottom line isn't necessarily going to be a net positive for the drivers, why do we see it so often?
Because it works like 15% of the time. And so you're just hoping for that one. Truex is thinking, well, I'm not going to win the race from fifth, but if I can somehow stick this 3 wide, get to third, another caution comes out, okay, now I'm back in the game. So I think your mentality is that if I just stay in line here, I'm not going to go anywhere. He doesn't really care about the inside line having momentum. He just cares about getting the 1 or 2 spots he needs entering turn 1. But likely too, you're thinking, well, this thing isn't going to last. These cautions are going to keep coming, so I'm going to just get everything I can here in the short term, and hopefully a caution does come out, and then I just keep leapfrogging and gaining a couple spots.
Okay, so I understand that if Truex gains a spot and a caution comes out, he's back in the game. But what about like Corey LaJoie?
Yeah, I'm not really sure. I tried to look at this so many different ways, and I tried to see, kind of who was in the gas, who was not, and it was definitely a weird scenario for sure. It's hard to really listen. It's not hard to draw what I believe my conclusion is, and that is that Corey was just entirely too aggressive in that moment. But I saw where he did get a shove from the 16, and likely was getting a shove to where he's like, well, I can't check up because the 8 car is right there. Now, this is both the first time that he made a move on the 8, not the second when he actually hit him. So he's got this run from the 16, and he pulls down, the 8's there. And so he's like, oh, well, I can't lift because I am getting this shove, and if I lift, then I'm going to get turned around. So he goes out to the left. He goes out to the left, and so now by going to the left, you can see the corner a little bit more. I can't tell you how difficult it is to be 20th in line at a Pocono restart. You have no idea where the corner is. It's very hard to tell. You're kind of looking at the cones going by and saying, okay, I think I'm at my lift point now. And you're really kind of gauging it off the cars around you as well. But it's very hard to see because you're up someone's rear end. You can't really see anything. So he dips out to the left to see the corner. I think he's to see the corner and not hit the 8 or lift and get turned. But then he gasses up, and everyone else starts lifting at that point where he's then re-accelerating. So the only kind of issue I guess I have is that if you are already 4 wide, which they were, this is almost like a Joey Logano incident at Indy at the road course. Remember when he came barreling in on the inside and wiped out like a bunch of cars because eventually you have to merge. Well, there's not 5 lanes, right? And if you think you're going to stick it 5 wide bottom, like you are content on just crashing whoever's on the outside of you. And so I just think it was a tough scenario, and I don't think there was any intent to it, but it just kind of looked weird where, why was Corey still accelerating when others were decelerating a little bit for the corner? I mean, we had to make a corner, and especially when you're back there that far in the pack, your lift point needs to be way further back than what it is when you're in the first couple rows. First couple rows, you're driving in there just like you would normally under green. You've got nothing holding you back. But it's such a log jam because people starting in row 4, 5, 6 or 3 and 4 wide, they have to merge. And what that happens is you see it on the highway. When you see merging happen, you usually see a stack up. Well, that means you have to back up your corner just a little bit there because everyone is trying to merge into just a couple lanes in turn 1.
Well, he said after the race that he gassed it up because he didn't want to get run over.
Yeah, I think he was talking about after he made contact with the 8, and I saw that. So he actually made the correct move there to, when he hit the 8, instead of just kind of slowing down, he gassed it up, which he was probably explaining it's going to look worse than it actually was, which is true, is that he was hoping that the 8 wasn't going to come back up and clip him. So he cleared himself of that.
This is just another, blip in this continued stretch of bad luck for Kyle Busch. Went from being in a playoff spot to now well outside of a playoff spot. If you're Kyle Busch, what is your mindset for the rest of this season? Like, how do you gain your confidence back and
you
look
just try to get something going. I mean, you try to get a top 10. You know what I mean? Just some kind of solid finish that gets you like back to being competitive. You know, I think that's the tough part about all this is that he, for the better part of his career, was the guy, the best driver on the racetrack. And now, you know, week in, week out, it's like we just don't hear from him that much. And so, you know, there's a plenty of reasons why that is. They had looked like some mechanical failures during practice and then before the race, and like just all kinds of stuff going on that's just not normal. And I don't know. It's just you haven't seen a sustained bad run like this by, you know, an elite Hall of Famer in quite some time.
This was a discussion on the teardown last night, and Jordan's argument was that, you know, if you can win a race, if you can get back to the front and win a race, get in the playoffs, that it's not over. Like the season's not over. You can regain your mojo.
What have you seen that makes you think he's going to win a race?
Nothing. That's what I'm asking you.
That's what I'm saying is that, okay, can he win a race? Yes, absolutely. But not legitimately. He's not going to win one legitimately, and that's just a fact. And I apologize to the Kyle Busch fans listening, but we have to be honest with ourselves. He's got to, you know, I'm not putting this on Kyle. Trust me, I've been teammates with him. The guy is elite. He's great, but you've got to show that you can at least consistently run in the top 5 to even have a chance to win, and we haven't seen that lately. And so the speed hasn't been there. Now, can he win a race? Yes. Joey Logano won a race from 17th at Nashville. So it is possible, but you're going to need some crazy to happen. For you know, the odds are very, very low that, you know, you're going to win a race running 17th all day. You're going to need fuel mileage to be a factor. You're going to need just chaos at the end. And trust me, NASCAR racing nowadays, that's half of what it is. So there's always a chance. So you're saying there's a chance. But realistically, as a Kyle Busch fan like I am, it's just not a legit possibility right now from what I've seen. I just don't see them showing up one weekend and then all of a sudden being the fastest car on the racetrack.
So then with only a handful of races left in the regular season, how do you approach these last 5 or 6 if you're Kyle Busch, if you're the 8
I think
team?
the only way to approach it is to be a professional, and you show up and you do your job to the best of your ability, and then control what you can control. I mean, that's my advice. If anyone ever wanted to hear it, is that you do the best that you possibly can, and you let the chips fall where they may. And if you don't have the fastest car, you try to drive that car to a couple spots better, or, you know, just put yourself in position to where, you know what, if this turns into a fuel mileage race, let's make a call that we could win this thing on fuel mileage. You know, what that means is that the team now would, in this points position where they're definitely going to need to win a race. So what happens is, here's where an opportunity could pop up for a team like Kyle Busch. You get inside that close to the last fuel window. We're 5 laps short on making it on fuel. You know what? Screw it. Let's pit. And we're going to try to squeeze this thing to the end. Nobody else is going to make it. We're going to pit, and we're going to win this thing. That's how you can make it happen. Short of that, I just don't know how it's going to happen. I haven't seen the speed out of RCR all year long. Certainly not where they were last year. It seemed like Kyle, you know, winning those 6 races, and it seemed like the first half of the season, right? The 3 races in the first half of the season, you know, they had speed. You know, while it wasn't, a few of their wins was like, yeah, things kind of worked out, but they were still in position to win. They haven't been in position all year long, you know, with the exception of maybe 1 or 2 races, or maybe you want to talk about a super speedway race. So, but, you know, the light at the end of the tunnel is that there's no place to go but up. I mean, he's had a terrible skid. I commend him so much on how he's handling it.
I was about to say, do you think he's resigned to this fact that they're running poorly because he's not the fiery Kyle Busch in the media that we've
That's
seen
what
in
his
the past.
post-race interview yesterday, it seemed like he was just in a whatever. I'm at peace right now.
I know, but I just don't believe that to be Kyle Busch. I don't. I just, you've seen interviews from Kyle in the past, and he's had the oh well attitude, but on the inside he is full of fire. And when the camera turns off, he'll then be that fiery Kyle Busch. But I don't know. This is different. This is different than what I've seen before. And again, I'm not following him around, but you're not going to turn off the competitive juices of someone like Kyle Busch. It just doesn't turn off. And so I will not buy into the fact that he is just resigned to, this is where I'm at now, and this is what I got to live through until it gets better. So I think he still shows up ready to go and still could, be the fastest driver on any given day as long as he's got a horse that can go with him. But we just haven't seen that horse show up.
Before we move on, Corey LaJoie, is that just a racing incident to you, or is it something more that NASCAR will?
No, NASCAR won't look at it. It's an on-track racing incident. But yeah, I mean, it's Corey LaJoie's fault. There's no question about that. I think he could have used better judgment when you're 4 or 5 lanes wide. Eventually, you have to merge, and you have to let off to merge. So I just think it was a bit aggressive on his part, but it was still, you still could classify this under a racing incident that just things happen like this on restarts at Pocono.
Another racing incident early in this race, I mean, I guess just a wreck, is that Ross Chastain wrecked out of this one, which will open the door for Bubba Wallace to get a good finish, and goes from 53 points back now to 27 points back of Chastain, and now is very much in that window of could still point his way into this. What are you seeing from the 23 car, and what is the conversation in the comp meetings leading into this playoff stretch?
I think that it certainly was it was uncharacteristic of Chastain to lose it on his own.
I think he said the steering went though.
Oh, it did.
I believe that's what he said.
Huh.
So they weren't sure on the broadcast.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting. That would be 2 steering issues, because I think Kyle Busch had one in practice, or at least that's what the TV said. But I would say, while it was a good point stay for the 23, they're still lacking pace. I don't know where that pace is. It's just, it's head scratching a little bit that they just don't have the pace that, it seems like the other JGR or 2311 Toyotas have, but they're finishing to their best ability on race day, which that's really, really good. So they're executing well, which that's half the battle. The speed stuff we can figure out, and Bubba can figure out, and the team can figure that out. So they're at least keeping themselves in the game for when they do figure that out. So I think that certainly if you would have been 53 back with 5 to go, like especially on Ross, that's going to be hard to make up. But I think 20 something, if you can find the pace to when the reason you need pace is you need stage points. You need to qualify well. You need stage points. And then you need to finish in the top 10. I think that he's got one of those worked out, and that's the finishing part. He's finishing, probably better than his pace would show. But I tell you, he's at least back in the game now. And these things can go one way or another, right? So, certainly it's not a must-win for that team quite yet. Everyone else behind them, you got Briscoe 75 back. That's going to be a must-win. So it's pretty much Bubba, Chastain, Buescher that are the 3 that are the questionable. Buescher having a little bit more of a gap there at 44 up, but still, all it takes is one winner at Daytona, and that cut line moves, and next thing you know, it's Gibbs is back in question of making the playoffs, and like, wow, that's, we've seen it. It's all been possible. You get some winners, and I don't suspect there'll be another outside winner other than maybe Daytona. I guess at Indy this weekend there could be, if strategy could be a thing this weekend where you could put the 20th place car out front and he would be very, very hard to pass. So I think that it's possible. It's possible that someone else could win. And if that's the case, then Bubba will definitely be in a must win.
I thought this past weekend's race for Bubba was a really good one, considering it seemed like the setup was missed, or he hated the car, and he was asking for just make wholesale changes, and was able to just find ways to keep moving forward and got a top 10 finish out of it. Yeah,
I mean, so much of this is, trying to give a driver a car that is comfortable. Sometimes fast cars are not fully comfortable, but it's a balance. Certainly, the crew chief would always want to just put the fastest car that they can build on the racetrack, and one that's super aggressive. But sometimes, drivers, if it gets kind of wonky over the bumps, as we saw during qualifying with the 23, that's hard to, you can't sustain that. You're not going to be able to drive that in the long term. Now, Bubba did get on the apron, which made it worse than what it actually was. But still, that, the things like that, having that comfort to speed ratio just right is something that the teams balance every week.
What about at the top half of these playoff standings? It's pretty rare that we see there be a 20-point gap between first and fourth with only a handful of races left in the regular season. Usually by this point, it's a two-car race, or if anything, the guy at the top is checked out. Yeah,
it's a good race for the regular season, and you got really kind of, I don't know, it looks like it's in order of, the cars that have been the best over the year, which obviously that's the points is working out. But yeah, it seems like it's kind of anyone's race, and I think it's going to be who can capitalize, who can qualify well. Larson's been really good in qualifying over the last really the whole season. He's probably got the most poles of all of us. Reddick, I feel like, is probably the next best qualifier. Then it feels like it's me and Elliott's pretty close. I'm usually about 11th or 12th every single week, it seems like. We're a little better at Pocono. Byron, he'll be up there. So it's a lot of things can happen, and certainly the type of racetracks that we have coming up. Travis, give me the remaining regular season schedule.
Indy, Richmond.
Yeah. Indy, Richmond.
Michigan, Daytona, Darlington.
Look at my chops on that. Those are good races. I like those. All those racetracks are awesome. So I think this is going to be, it's going to come down to the end. Where's Daytona? It's before Darlington, right?
Before Darlington.
And so Darlington's the last one. Yeah, I mean, I think we'll have an idea, because Darlington, there's not really altering strategy things that can happen, right? I think when you look at, like, based on speed, like, all these cars are close, right? So you're not going to really beat someone by 10 spots in a stage, likely, on just speed at Darlington. And the only thing that could flip that up is, like, strategy. But at Darlington, you need to pit for tires each and every time. So I think after Daytona, the picture of who's really going to contend for this at Darlington is going to really show up.
How many more races this year will strategy play into this? Like Indy next week, will strategy play a big role in how you approach the race and get stage points and whatnot?
Yeah, it really will, and certainly it'll be a track position type racetrack for sure. But it's going to be, it'll be tough. It's going to be wild on restarts. I think you'll have restarts very similar to Pocono, where guys are trying to fit it in spots that are not there, and talk about a track that's even narrower than what Pocono is. Pocono at least has like 2.5 to 3 legit lanes. Like, if you put the cars side by side of each other, it's 3 lanes wide, truly. So that means that's actually 2 lanes wide when you're actually racing, because you got to leave a little bit of room. So Indy is one lane. And when I say one lane, it is one lane, not 1.5. It is one. And so we all know being on the outside is not going to be preferred at that place. And so I think that you're going to want to be on the bottom. And then what's going to happen is we're going to go down these long straightaways, and everyone's going to try to go 3 wide bottom, and everyone's going to try to merge. And usually you're probably going to see a lot of wrecks late.
So if you don't want the top lane, how many spots are you willing to give up to go on the inside lane on a restart? If you're willing to say that number.
It's interesting because I should say that it's one lane after a lap. It is multiple lanes when they do clean it up under caution. It does get better in that second lane, which is why you've actually seen when we were there in the oval, people would restart on the outside lane there because they would get such a good run off of 1 into 2. But the minute that it's just something to do with the track. The track is like this diamond ground, and so it takes the rubber and it grinds the rubber off the tire, and then it throws it up in the lane right above you. So whenever you try to go up there after cars run on the bottom for a while, if there's no one running that second lane, it just fills up with this dust, and it fills up with this these marbles. And your car will just take off. So I should say that it's a one-lane racetrack after one lap. So you can make the top work for on a restart for a corner, maybe 2, but after that, you've got to get to the bottom.
How do you approach this race at Indy when it comes to strategy? Because considering that, how tight the top of this point standing is, the difference between winning the regular season and finishing 4th in the regular season is 7 playoff points.
Yeah, I mean, you just do everything. I mean, you can try to look at points all you want, but I want to win, and so I want to do whatever it takes to win, and that was my message to Chris this weekend. It's like, just whatever it takes to win, right? We can talk about different strategies and this, that, the other, but like, put me in the strategy that gives me a chance to win. And so I think that that's going to be the mentality. It just kind of depends on where you're at. Also, certainly there'll be opportunities for people to jump stages, but I think unlike Pocono, I think the leader will stretch out an even further gap than they did at Pocono. So you better be within the top 5 if you want to even have a chance, I think, to pit and not lose a lap there. So, I think that strategy, I don't know, Chris and the whole team, they'll work up something during the week and go through all the what ifs. But ultimately, if you feel like you can win the race, you're going to put whatever strategy you can in that puts you towards the front at the end.
Obviously, execution, super important too, as we saw at the end of Pocono, Larson and Elliott throw away what probably would have been top 5 finishes on speeding penalties on pit road that sent them back into the pack.
Yeah, I mean, Chase Elliott hadn't had one in 93 races or something like that.
92 was the number.
He didn't make it to 93.
Yeah.
So that was an unbelievable stat. You always seem to kind of get hit by one somewhere along the way, but he hasn't. But that was the first time, and we did hear on the radio that Section 7 was hot for everyone when we did our pre-race roll. All the cars, but I think 4 sped. So there was something weird about that. And if you look at Pocono's, if we were to set our car on cruise control, best way to explain this. So each section, we're able to go higher or lower than actual pit road speed. What happens, and the reason that drivers speed most times is we're trying to cheat that. So we're trying to figure out where is NASCAR registering a low speed, even though you're going a certain RPM, which is a certain speed. Sometimes it reads lower on their end. So what do? You try to get more because you won't be caught speeding. Pocono is one where they almost need to recalibrate it because it has got more sections than I think any other pit road. It's like 18, like every 2 pit boxes is a speedy is the markers for their timing lines. but they're all up and down. Like you can run the same exact speed, same RPM, put your car on cruise control, and it's going to read, let's just say the speed limit, let's just pretend it was 45 miles per hour. It would read 43.5 in one section, 44.7 in another, 44.1, 43.5. Like, it's just so up and down. And it's weird that that's the case on a straight pit road. Usually it's really consistent, but Pocono, for whatever reason, has a lot of variance in their sections. And so it certainly caught the field off guard there when everyone was speeding there in Section 7, which was a very small section. And so we made adjustments on the 11 car all day to accommodate that. So we didn't get busted by it. But yeah, it seemed like I was amazed that there weren't more speeding penalties in Section 7 throughout the day because everyone had sped. And so it was crazy for me to believe that really everyone made adjustments, that fine tune of adjustments before we went racing. And they did until it seemed like the very end when everyone got busted.
Should NASCAR, if you have 33 cars or whatever the number was that go speeding when you're testing out, do you let the cars go around again, or like it feels like that's...
Yeah, I think they'll probably re-evaluate it. My guess is because obviously, that throws up a red flag to them that, okay, something's probably out of whack. We didn't have 33 cars just miss it. Like that doesn't make any sense. And it doesn't make sense because it's just the way it all worked out. So I think that they just need to recalibrate it. And then when we go back there and do our roll, we'll kind of see where we're at.
Do you recognize that each of these sections is a little different? Like when you're going down pit road, you're like, oh, I can gas it up a little bit more here.
Well, my spotter will say, 9 green here or 1 red. 1 red means I can push it a little bit more because NASCAR's what they're showing is a little bit lower. But yeah, I mean, he's constantly telling me where I can go, where I need to check up. But it's a very difficult task.
Heading to Indy next week, you tested there a few weeks back. Did y'all find anything you're looking forward to implementing?
I mean, I felt like our car was good on speed, good on balance. I didn't really have any major concerns leaving there, truthfully. I think that if we wanted an IndyCar style race, which is where cars stay somewhat close to each other in the corners on new tires. I know that Aero is really, really bad in Indy at Indy on hot tires, but then they are able to have a slingshot down the straightaway and really draft up and then pull out and pass. To do that, I just still feel like we're running about 7 miles an hour too fast in the corners because we are on the verge of getting the gas down and just you need all the air to really keep your foot down on the gas. And I just think that the second place car, third place car, fourth place, on back, they're going to be at such a disadvantage aerodynamic wise that they're not going to be able to stay close enough in the corners to be able to do that slingshot pass down the straightaway. So the closest we had to that was our previous generation car. We had so much downforce on it that everyone had quite a bit of grip. But it's going to be very, very difficult in this next gen car to stay close enough in the corners to have a remote shot to pass the guy in front of you down the straight.
Would you say that you have a significant advantage going into this week considering you had that additional practice session?
I would say normally, yes, under a 20-minute practice session, but we're going to have a full 50 minutes. So the field, they're just so smart now. The drivers are so good. They're going to figure it out within a half hour. So what advantage I did have, I think that they'll take that away during that hour of practice.
So how much time? It sounds like if you give each team an hour of practice, that's all they'll need. Like where's the line where it starts to fall off?
Well, this is the balance of what we're talking about. And when you hear people like Brad Keselowski say, "Oh, we want more practice," that is going to be bad for racing because the more you put the cars on the track, what I'm saying is right now I feel like we have an advantage, but it's just like that Martinsville test we had a few years ago. the field was spread out. There was actually passing going on because there were slow cars and there was fast cars, and then there was medium cars. But if you give these people enough on-track time, everyone migrates to the same speed, and everyone runs the same speed. So then how will you pass if then everyone tunes their car in to be so good? And why it was difficult to pass at the end of Pocono. At the beginning of the race, people's setups are not exactly tuned in. You run 200, 300 miles, you tune your setup up, you get your car just right, you go run that last 100 miles. Wow, it's hard to pass. I can't pass like I could early in the race. Well, no kidding. Everyone gets their cars better as races go on. They get their cars better as practice goes on, but that is in turn makes for a tough race to watch because you can't make passes because everyone runs the same speed.
So then 50 minutes is more than enough time for teams to dial it in.
Absolutely. Yes. Yeah, it'll be enough time for people to dial their stuff in. And the good news is that the tracks are very similar. So Pocono and Indy, I think that, people won't be out in left field at Indy because the tracks for a very long time, they've been somewhat similar enough to where you can run some of the basic stuff.
Could you qualify first and then practice? Could you unload and qualify?
Yeah, we're getting in the weeds, but I don't think so. I don't think that's the right way to do it. I think it's always best to give the teams practice. We do that at Daytona.
Right.
We practice. Yeah, but then look at all the problems. Like we've had cars, not be able to, take off. They had mechanical issues and stuff. I'm definitely not in favor of that. So I think the way we do it is fine. It's just I warn against more practice is better for racing. I do not believe that to be the case.
How bad do you want to win this Indy race? Where does this rank on your...
Well, I want to win it bad, but I also know that I need to just control what I can control, right, is doing my job on the racetrack, off the racetrack. This is going to be a race that it can be frustrating. If you can have a very, very fast car, and if you put that fast car in 10th place, it's going to be tough. It'll be tough for you to come back from that. So it comes from executing right when you unload to the checker flag. So I'm just got to make sure that I do my job the best of my ability. And if we do, then we're going to have a great shot. But I want to win it bad.
How long did it take in your career to tell yourself to control what you can control and not force it? We see a lot of times these younger drivers try to do a dumb move on a restart when they're 20th. How long into your career did you learn that ability?
It took a while for sure. I'm probably a control freak anyway, where I want to have my hands in things that, sometimes I don't need to have my hands in. But I think generally speaking, I just found it to work better. When I kind of let, Gabe Hart have the reins of, you just tell me what to do, coach, and I'll run the play that you call. That just seems to have worked better over the last 4 to 5 years of my career. So probably in the last 4 to 5 that really I've had that mindset, and I'm confident enough in my abilities as long as I do, a good job and I make sure I don't make any mistakes on my end, then we're always going to have a shot because I know the team's going to build me a fast enough car.
Did you have a realization then before getting paired up with Gabe Hart that, hey, I need to do something a little bit differently?
Yes and no. I've always been a little bit hands off when it comes to the cars and setups and things like that. I know how to stay in my lane as far as that's concerned. I was more hands-on in the short track ranks, and I knew that, more right rear spring. Okay, well, it's going to make you turn better. I knew all those things, and I used to have to do that for myself way back in the day. But things are just so different now. And as a driver, I'm old enough to know enough that I don't know anything. When it comes to what makes these cars go fast, and sometimes things work opposite of the way that you would think they would. So. I let the smart people do smart people things, and I'm just the guy holding the wheel.
Do you ask Chris when he makes a call for the reason, or is it he makes the call and you trust him so much that you don't really ask?
Yeah. I would say strategy-wise, I certainly voice my opinion, and we have discussions before races on what my thoughts are. And sometimes he needs those to understand how aggressive should I make the call. Denny, do you think you're going to be good enough or fast enough to, if I put you in 6th entering the last stage, are you going to be able to pass them legitimately? That's a question or an answer he needs to know to then plan out the proper strategy to win the race.
Like, so for example, the call to take more fuel and sit on pit road longer, is that something that he tells you, and do you ask why, or is it just like...
I don't ask why. I understand that there's a reason for it. It doesn't matter whether I agree with it or not. I need to sit there until the tank is full. And so I don't think it could have, had those cars not had a penalty, it would have played a factor, right? I would have been fourth or sixth or something.
I think 6 is where he came out.
Yeah, so that would have been very, very hard to overcome. Instead, I got to start on the front row with Blaney, right? So I think that was a factor. But those other guys, they were playing a game to where they were going to be short on fuel. So, we were packing it to make sure that we were good to go. We were never going to come down pit road for the rest of the race. Those guys were banking on cautions. Well, the cautions came, so then it didn't matter at that point. But that's just kind of the roulette that you're playing by not keeping your car full.
I'm curious. We're going to talk about crew chief moves here shortly and off-track news. But what is the average shelf life of a driver crew chief combination?
Oh, man. Gosh, that's a good question. I don't really know. I think everyone's relationship is a little different. Every driver and crew chief, there's different personalities. And do you hang out outside the racetrack, or is it strictly professional relationship? I've seen some of the best relationships be one that are strictly professional, like the Chad and Jimmy ones, right? They kept it straight professional and whatnot. And, that was kind of the only time they interacted was when they were working. I think that's what you hear. So I think that it's different strokes for different folks, but I don't know that there is a shelf life. I think when you have results, things just naturally just keep on going. And so the only time that they made a change when it was Chad and Jimmy was when the results just were no longer there, right? And then I think after that, after Jimmy came Cliff, and Jimmy didn't have great results there, and then he moved on, right? So I think it's just you stick with what works, and I think, if I were 30 years old, I would say, well, Chris is my guy for as long as I'm in the Cup Series, right? Until the results no longer say that that's a good combination. Now, sometimes, when you have different generation cars or different technology that maybe comes out, maybe the crew chief isn't as tuned on those things, and you need a different perspective to come from the outside and say, why aren't we thinking of things this way? But I just think that the great ones are able to get the most out of their people, and their process to prepare is the same no matter what the car is, and the great ones are great.
That segues into some off-track news, and that Rodney Childers is going to Spire next year to crew chief Corey LaJoie in the 7 car.
Yeah. Is it surprising? Not really. I don't think it's super surprising. Well, I think that generally speaking, we know Spire's they're trying to get better, right? I think that the 7 car in general is stuck in a lull of performance that is not, kind of up to where the 77's at. The 71's getting better week in, week out. It seems like they're starting to, get better than what they were. And the 7's just kind of been in the same kind of 20th to 25th most weeks. And while that would have probably been okay 3 or 4 years ago, I think that, TJ and Dickerson expect a little bit more than that now, especially with the resources that they're putting in the team. And so I think this is a good move by them to say, all right, well then, this is kind of how it works, right? Is that you get another crew chief, and then you get another crew chief, and then eventually it's like, okay, we can't find anything that works with you, so it's got to be you at some point. So I think, they're putting all their chips on the table and going to give Corey in the 7 car the best crew chief that they could go out and get. And now it's a situation where Corey has to step up and perform better. And so he would tell you that himself. And this will certainly put the pressure on him to go out there and perform, because we know that Rodney will build him a fast car, and they should be, at least 5, 6, 7 spots on average better than what they are week in, week out now.
Yeah, this seems like it'll be the most high-pressure situation Corey's had in his career. Certainly one of the best situations, if not the absolute best.
Yeah, because, I think you always had the excuse of, well, my stuff's not as good as others people's and this, that, and the other. One thing's for sure, right? Spire has good pit crews. They have Hendrick developmental guys, and you can see the 7 or 77 or whatever. Their pit crews are up front most weeks. It's not the pit crew. Like they're fast guys. Their cars, they have an alliance with Hendrick Motorsports, and I don't know what technology they share back and forth, but it seems like Carson's at least getting like the most out of it. Whatever it is that they've got, he's getting the most out of it week in, week out. So yeah, eventually you start to cross off all these things that might be variables of why the performance is not where it needs to be. And once you cross all those things off, then you eventually have to look at yourself and say, what do I need to do better? Because I clearly need to step up. And this is just one of those things that's crossing off some of the variables before Corey really needs to look back at himself and say, all right, well, he's always going to look and say, how can I be better? I know that about Corey. He's always inquisitive on things that, he feels like he could do better. I think he wants to be better. And this next year is going to be a big moment for him.
Noah Gragson to front row?
Yeah, so I think that's a good opportunity for Noah. I spoke with Noah while he was kind of on his job search. And, I'm a fan of Noah's, and I think that he's got the ability to go out there and do it. And, what I said to him after, he told me he was gonna sign with Front Row, I said, listen, that's a place that you have a chance to go win. Bob Jenkins is obviously investing in our sport, and he's going to grow, and it seems like he's putting a lot of chips on the table to try to get better as well. And so I think this is a good move for both. I think when you look at what they will have, what we do know right now with Front Row is they're going to have Todd Gilliland, they're going to have Noah Gragson. That's a good young group right there that you can build around.
Is this a good sign for NASCAR that in the past few years, the teams here that have run towards the bottom of the pack and Spire and Front Row, it seemed like they're investing even more to become better? So like those teams at the bottom are now trying to push their way up?
Yeah, every team, you don't know what they're investing beyond what we see, right? What we see is headlines, right? And we see that, Front Row's going to go out and they're going to purchase a charter, but we don't know, are they spending more money on their people? Are they investing in more technology? We knew that they did because they did with Penske, right? They had this alliance with Penske that they started. That seems like that improved their performance.
Well, remember, McDowell told us that they didn't have a Hawkeye machine last year when he won.
Yeah, so every team has its challenges when it comes. The smaller teams have its challenges when it comes to being competitive and being able to go up against the Gibbs and the Hendricks and the Penskes of the world. It's very, very, very difficult. They have so many resources. But you always feel like you're on the cusp of like, we're right there. We can compete with them if we had blank, right? And so you keep trying to knock off these things, those blanks, to try to get better. And you see whether, eventually there's going to be a point where, you got diminishing returns and you're just spending money and you're not gaining as much as what you were hoping. So I think that I'm really been impressed with Bob Jenkins and his decisions with his drivers and, where he's going with this company. I think that, this is a moment where he's saying, I'm part of the sport for the long term. I'm going to be here. And, this is something that I want for myself and my kids in the long run.
Yeah, I was just looking at it from the perspective of, Front Row purchasing another charter, adding another driver to their fleet. it's another person in competition. That's another brain. That's another set of opinions. And then from the Spire perspective, they're bringing over McDowell, a veteran guy.
Yep.
They just hired Rodney, who's obviously a highly sought after crew chief. Like, these teams are bringing more people into their
the field's getting
workforce.
closer, right? The difference between the haves, the middles, and the have-nots, it seems like it is all getting closer, right? And so what that makes is for more unpredictable finishes and unpredictable winners at times. And while it gives hope for these small teams is that under this platform of the next gen car, they feel like they're just one move away, one crew chief away, one driver away from competing week in, week out.
Bubba Wallace was fined $50,000 this week. However, he said that it was one of the best things that ever happened to him, and that when he received the call, he was with Kevin Harvick and got some very appreciative advice.
Yeah, I think that he was very pointed in his interview there, and his response of that. I think that NASCAR made probably the only call they could. They were under. Again, NASCAR really reacts to whatever people say on social media a lot. They do. And so when this was under a microscope, and again, I firmly believe he got fined because it was on TV and it was the race winner. Had this been back there and we had to use somebody's, Justin Haley's in-car camera to see Chase and Daniel Suarez going at it, that was off camera. Like, that was something that came later, right? And so, they bumped each other. It wasn't hard, but still, these things happen on a weekly basis. And so it just happened to be Alex showing him right there on live TV. Here comes Bubba out of the blue, and he punches him up in the wall. And so I think Jeff Burton did a great job of explaining during the race. He was like, listen, the line that they're drawing seems to be pretty clear, is that you can't spin people out under caution, or you can't knock them into the wall, or things like that. Anything else, I think that they're going to be okay with. So there seems to be that clear line there.
Why is there no appeal coming from 2311?
Why drag this on? Let it go. You learn from the mistake, and it was a mistake. You shouldn't have done it. And you just you move on.
Dear Denny, this one comes from Off Track. And the question is, a year later, any update on Austin's 5.0 Uber rating?
Oh, wow. I don't. We'll have to get in touch with him on that.
I hope he's listening in right now, and we should get a text here shortly.
Did you get any Uber? Did he call any Ubers while you're in Chicago? Because that's where it started, was last year, Chicago, right?
Yeah.
Is it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Remember we had to walk really far?
We had to walk like 5,000 miles to meet the Uber because he didn't want the Uber driver to go through the hassle of coming to pick him up. I'm not sure. We will get you an update on that next week. But yes, Austin is super.
He says 5.0.
It is 5.0? Still?
Said 5.0.
That's good for him. I don't know that really matters, but congratulations, Austin.
Remember, he goes to extreme feats to keep this.
I know.
Like, has a conversation with the person before he exits the car. Hey, you're going to give me that 5.0, right? Like, here's an extra 20.
He does?
Oh, yeah.
Does he know that you don't get anything? Like, a 4.8 and a 5.0 are the same.
It's just pride. He sent a screenshot. It is 5.0.
Okay. He was really worried about putting Jay White in the car that one time under him. Remember?
I was in the car. I was in the car with him. That driver.
You were?
Yeah, that driver got a healthy tip. A healthy tip.
Because didn't he get sick or something like that? He
just fell asleep. It was like the driver, because we all had to go to different locations, and
he had too many Cokes that day.
Too many Cokes. So the driver, where you need to go, 555.
Yeah, he couldn't spit out the address, could he?
No.
God.
No. Denny, what's your rating?
Let me have a look. See, and again, I had this moment with this gentleman in Miami, if y'all remember.
Is that the one that made it to Twitter?
Yes, the one where he kicked me out of the car because my mask wasn't covering the tip of my nose. That's why he kicked me out. 4.81. That is such bullshit because I tip like crazy. Like, I am a huge tipper. I don't care whether it's I'm in a Waffle House or I'm any person that works in the service industry, period. I am at least a 30 to 40%.
But you're held
tipper.
to a different standard with tipping, guarantee it, than if it was me or Jared.
I know, but like,
not right, but
if I
you
go to Red Rocks Cafe in Birkdale, those who want a good lunch, I go there all the time, and my bill's $19. I tip $20. I mean, if my bill is low, I will tip almost 100%.
Well, you have to, though. Otherwise, your picture will get taken off the wall.
Yeah, then
Come on, man. Ron only threatens those things if you make him mad. He'll threaten to take you off the wall. He's always got the screwdriver ready.
are you on the menu too?
Yeah, of course.
Well, that'd be the one you don't want to lose, right?
Denny will never
Sure.
lose that.
Sure.
Denny will never lose that.
I've got a 4.982.
4.98. See, I have 4.81.
Oh,
But I don't talk to the people.
I don't either.
I just sit back there. I stay quiet. I put my seatbelt on, and I get out and I say, "Thank you, sir. Thank you, ma'am." That's it. That's all I do. Are they mad I'm not talking to
And
them?
I guarantee I tip less than you. So
I wonder why. That's just rude. I don't know. I guess it's just rub everyone the wrong way.
You also need to tip quickly. I feel like that probably plays a role into it.
Okay. Up until a year ago, I didn't. And that was a problem because every time I asked for a ride, it would say, "Do you want to tip the previous?" And
Right.
that could have been 2 months ago.
Right. So that person's already submitted their review. They
there
didn't
it
think you
is.
left them a tip.
I
Poor
think that
rating.
might have been a problem. Yeah. So now, absolutely, you got to log back in right after your ride to tip.
Yep. You got to close it out.
Yep.
I got a review here from R. Benj3ing. I don't know how to pronounce that. But anyway, they say, "I've been following you since you raced at Southside. This podcast has been perfect extra access to learn and understand how to execute races the way you do. I'm bringing my youngest 2 children to Richmond for their first race. This is special because this is where I saw my first NASCAR race."
Well, awesome. Appreciate that review. Cool that you knew about Southside Speedway. Evidently, you watched me run my 4-cylinder mini stock around that place for many, many years. Shout out to all the people there in Chesterfield, Virginia. I'd love to bring back Southside. I know you keep asking me, but the state or the city will need to fund it. I'm not going to fund it myself. I will run it, but I will not fund it. So get with your local lawmaker on that. Hey, I want to give a couple shout outs, 3 of them, right? Real quickly before we leave. And we didn't talk on it much. Corey Heim, he won. He's great. Shocking, breaking news there. Cole Custer winning the Xfinity race, first win of the season for him. He's been in contention a ton. Good to see Cole really running well. Look forward to seeing his opportunity back in the Cup Series one day, whenever that might be. The other is for the NBC broadcast. Are they doing a great job or what?
they are. I don't want to give too much credit since Letart's on that, but yeah.
I know you don't want to give credit, but them explaining the strategy, they knew what the story was going to be going into the day. And so then they played on that the entire race. I wish almost they could show more illustrations on TV of like, all right, here's the box. And they did it in the third stage. It was like, here's the box of the third stage. Here's when the pit window opens. And you can pit anytime in that area for you to make it to the end. But if there's a caution that's really close to the front edge, you might want to think about it. And then, so they just did a really, really, really good job.
They did a good job with when you went back because you guys pitted longer to explain the fuel. I knew exactly what was going on with your strategy. It was perfect.
Yeah. And so I think you have this because Steve Letarte is one of the most recent crew chiefs that we have as an analyst, right? He does an exceptional job. But beyond that, I think Jeff Burton and him, they have a really good rapport with each other. And while I was worried about this gaping hole that Dale Jr. was going to leave in that booth, I think that this trio that we have with Rick and Jeff Burton and Letarte is working really, really well. So I think they do a fantastic job with their production. They explain the race. They don't just show you the race. They stay on camera shots. They don't zoom in on camera shots. They're doing a great job for our sport. So thank you, NBC.
The question is, how will Lee Diffie fit into that?
Lee Diffie is going to be badass. Just listen to him during the 100-meter dash at the Olympics. He's exciting. He's going to be great. But I'll tell you, if Rick Allen is not going to be part of the NBC for the rest of the season during that, somebody better pick up Rick Allen, because Rick is doing a great job as well. And I know that there's talks of TV partners. Who are they going to hire? This or that? Rick needs to be part of the NASCAR broadcast.
Yeah, following the broadcast silly season has arguably been more fun than following the driver silly season, and who's going to make up the Amazon team next year, and or who's going to be on Dale Jr.'s broadcast team and all that.
Yeah, there's a lot of moving pieces certainly, and there's going to be a lot of opportunities out there. We have some talented people that certainly. When the gap fell with Race Hub there, you had some people, lose their jobs, and hopefully they land back on their feet. And some of those people obviously, need to be on Cup Sundays or Xfinity Saturdays. And so I think the talent will still find its way to the booth some way.
Anything else you want to add before we close out here?
No, just look forward to this one last week, right? Before the break?
One more week before the break.
One more. Hopefully we can get a win. If not, at least have a good, strong run. Keep this going, because, man, Lulu was one more bad finish away from getting the boot.
Somebody tweeted at me, "Oh, it's not Lulu." I'm like, Denny didn't win. This does not count for Lulu. She's still winless.
So you're saying till she gets a win?
Yeah, she needs a win before she can earn her keep here.
Okay, all right. I like you staying strong on that, Travis.
Well, she's got one more week. It's not going to be good if you got to go through this 2-week stretch. I was wondering, did Chris set a goal hey, let's win a race before this break, kind of like he did back in May?
We did for before the playoffs. So we didn't set it for before the break. He set a goal for before the playoffs start. I would like for us to do blank.
What was that number?
Blank. I'm not telling you.
I'm going to guess it was 5.
All right. Well, we'll see you guys next week after Indy.